All right, let's go, guys. Let's go ahead and get started. Today, we will be talking about how to use walkthroughs to empower your customer success teams. Some quick introductions and an agenda. My name is Areya Dargahi. I'm an enterprise account executive here at ChurnZero. I've been at ChurnZero for about 3 years now, and I actually, in a former life, was a CSM for about 3 years leading up to my time here at ChurnZero. Used ChurnZero, had great success myself. That company got acquired, and what better place to work than a tool that you use, have really high confidence in, and know how to use in and out. So that's kind of how I showed up here. So in terms of the agenda and some of the things that we're going to walk through today, pun intended, what are in-app walkthroughs, how humans learn, how to segment your customer base for a personalized experience, really reducing the time to value in the first 90 days, and how to continuously improve the walkthrough guides and processes. So let's start with what are walkthroughs. We've all kind of seen them before. I'm sure we've all seen them before. Very generic in application, new user welcomes. In short, walkthroughs are multi-step pop-ups directly inside of the application, designed to drive some sort of action or behavior. Not pop-ups, not notifications, but they are designed to make me do something directly inside of the app, to change my behavior, to drive some sort of outcome. And to kind of understand why it's important we use these in customer success and in product and so forth, it's really important that we understand kind of how humans learn. I want to introduce you guys to the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. This was a study done in 1885 by Hermann Ebbinghaus et al. And he was trying to explain the decrease for the ability to for the brain to retain memory over time. And while it will differ with some people, obviously, based on some topics, interest level, attention rate, and so forth, but on average, he saw that for most people, we'll lose about 50% of the information that they've gathered within 30 minutes. And that continuously goes down over time, but the biggest drop happens in that first 30 minutes. And then the question also came, how do we increase the retainment rate? Well, it turns out to be repetition. It could be the same exact content, but over time and the number of repetitions, we as humans will continuously retain more of that content. Now, I think we can use this study directly in our application. The main thing, however, is we can't just show the same exact content, not be tactful of when we show it, how often we show it, but we do know repetition is key, so we have to keep that in mind. There's a lot of things that we could do, new styling, new talk tracks, but the idea and the overall goal is to make sure that we see it enough until we see that outcome that we're trying to get to, or those behaviors that we're trying to drive. So I want to pause here for a moment, and I want to kind of get a sense out of the people who have attended today. Does your application or product utilize any kind of in-app content or walkthroughs? So we'll take a second here and let everybody put in their answers. Once I see the numbers stabilize, I'll move on. It looks like they have. So it looks like 69% actually do. That's great to hear. We're seeing that continuously rise over time. I'd like to see it to the point where we're at 100, but 31% do not. I'd be curious to maybe in another conversation figure out kind of why that is. You know, one of the things where we see walkthroughs kind of fail is that they're overly generic. Everybody gets the same exact content. Everybody gets the same exact workflow. And what we want to do to make to make this more specific is do a better job at segmenting our customer base at scale. Obviously, that this has to do, we will keep our CS ops people as our right-hand man or woman, but we ultimately want to understand how we could trigger different types of in-app content or in-app walkthroughs depending on our segmentation. So I have some here to the right, just as examples, but this is by no means the end-all be-all. Maybe I have different content or walkthroughs for new users versus existing walkthroughs. I'm sorry, existing users. We find a lot of success by doing role-based or persona-based walkthroughs. An admin might see something completely different than an end user that does one thing versus one that does another. Depending on which product or module somebody has purchased, they might see a completely different walkthrough in another. I don't care to see a walkthrough about something that I didn't purchase. Maybe I have a completely different talk track for my lower revenue customers versus my higher revenue customers. If we analyze a lot of usage data, and I'm sure one of the things that we could see that users who use one feature heavily might see some positive benefits from using another. We could segment out those users and try to drive additional kind of adoption for other features that they might find beneficial. And self-service customers you might have a more specific or more thorough or even just more walkthroughs in general than somebody that has a dedicated CSM. Again, this is by no means the end-all be-all, but some common examples. If we take a look at the GIF that's playing on the screen over here, this is a walkthrough for Carol. Carol attended a training last week, and we put a trigger in here that says that if the people that attended the training did not use the features or the topics that we've spoke about on the training within a week, trigger a very specific walkthrough for them, talking about those features that we went through. I know a lot of CSMs this will resonate with them. How many times has somebody called or emailed you a week after you ran through a training with something you were very thorough on the week prior, right? So we can actually use in-app content, in-app walkthroughs to help kind of drive those. Next, I want to kind of switch to the first 90 days and how we can reduce time to value there. We all know that this is a really critical part of the customer lifecycle. And we want to be very tactful in how we're engaging, right? So you can only have so many meetings with a customer before they're kind of getting tired of you. It's a great time to use in-app walkthroughs or in-app engagement. For one, they boost engagement by about 3 times. Think about it. When they're inside of the application, they proactively made a conscious effort to log in. That's when they're going to be the most engaged. It's a really great time to send them any kind of content. In-app also tends to have a higher click-through rate than email itself by about 2 times. So if we're seeing higher click-through rates and higher engagement, why wouldn't we want to engage with them when they're inside of the application itself? So how do we do it? Again, I think that the idea behind it is not being generic, be as targeted as possible. So within the first 90 days or even shorter, I would use that type of segmentation that we talked about on the slide prior to understand the customer. What core features should they be using? How often should they be using them? And kind of identify a way to measure success. This could be different by role. This could be different by persona. Again, this could be different based on the products that they used. The idea or purchased. The idea is to kind of make sure that we have success criteria for each of these type of customers. And should they not be reaching those success criteria on their own, trigger these different type of in-app walkthroughs to help them get there. Again, I think it's going to be really critical to not have the same type of content just pop up over and over again if somebody just keeps exiting out of them. You want to think of new creative ways to kind of get the same message or the same point across. But as we saw in the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, repetition is key. So we need to deliver that content somehow. So I want to pause here for a second again, and for those who answered yes for their product having a kind of in-app walkthroughs or content, I want to get a sense of who's actually responsible for it. Does it come from the product? Does it come from customer success? Do you guys collaboratively work on this, or are we unsure or undecided? So let's take a second here and let the results come in. All right, it looks like the answers have stabilized. And guys, I'm really happy to see that the highest answer at 32% is both. I think this is a little bit of a change than what we would have seen in years past. There's this kind of intersectionality that's coming together between product and CS. It's really great to see. I have the privilege of speaking with CS and product teams every day, and sometimes I do, or a lot of times I really don't see that collaborative effort. So it's great to see on this webinar. So, one of the last things I want to talk about is ultimately, when we need to report on our success or lack thereof and improve. And as our product changes and expands and, our organization changes too, we need to make sure that our walkthroughs are reflecting that. So how can we improve? Well, first off, look at the reports, understand where customers are abandoning the guide, right? If this is a trend that we see happen with a large number of customers, we need to iterate on that. One of the things that we've done here at ChurnZero, we've asked people who are not users of our application to see if the guides are really easy to follow. When we live and breathe inside of our application, we tend to think that other people see it exactly how we do. That is not the case. I've actually had my fiance go through some of our application guides to see if she could follow it. I'm happy to say that she could. But if somebody who's a non-user of your app is having a lot of difficulty, consider kind of changing it around. Also try different use cases to see what works and what doesn't. Everything doesn't have to be a home run on day one. We'll go through some of what those use cases, what some other use cases might be on the next slide, but also have a backup plan. I know the theme of this webinar overall is automating this process, but if automation does not work, don't be afraid to get that information, again, whether the product team is managing, whoever it is, get that information to the CSM who manages that account and have them maybe pick up the phone or send an email. Hopefully the walkthrough will work, but if it doesn't, we need to have a backup or escalation plan to ultimately get us to that desired outcome. So what are some other use cases that we can use in-app walkthroughs, in-app notifications, announcements, pop-ups, things like that? I'll list a few out here. Again, this is by no means the end-all be-all, but I think a lot of these will resonate. Preemptively addressing most commonly submitted tickets. I think if we look at segments of our customers, we can almost predict what type of tickets that they will submit. That's a really great way to trigger in-app walkthroughs that address those before they even happen. For those products that are based off a consumption model where somebody needs to buy more tickets or tokens or credits or something like that, really easily trigger those to show them how to re-up on those. If their bill is late, and maybe how to pay their bill if there's some sort of portal directly inside of your application. New feature announcements are a really great idea. How to contact their CSM with regarding important account issues. You could link event or webinar sign up, access to content or knowledge base if you've seen them get stuck on a certain page longer than ideal. Self-service onboardings is a really great way to use walkthroughs, trigger them based on kind of where they are in the milestone. Offer upsell opportunities. Again, this goes back to micro segmenting our customer base. If we've seen them use specific features or modules a tremendous amount, and we know they're kind of ripe for an upsell opportunity, it's a great way to kind of get that in front of their eyes, as well as kind of escalating our escalations, right? So here's some takeaways. Remember, your customers are going to be most engaged when they're actually inside of the application. Take advantage of that. Take advantage. Do not treat all users the same. If the walkthroughs are too generic, the probability or the likelihood of exiting out of them becomes a lot higher. Be deliberate with your walkthroughs and aim for very specific outcomes. We're not just putting up pop-ups. We're not looking for views here. We're trying to drive behaviors. And then lastly, it's an iterative process. You're not going to get it right on day one. And the second you get it right, you got to try something else because something is going to change within your application. So this is going to be a constant, this is going to be a moving target. I want to say thank you to all of you. Again, my name is Areya. If anyone has any questions, I have my contact information here on the screen. I'll leave that up for a few seconds here. And then I also want to take a moment to tell you about the next Impact webinar that we have coming up on January 26th with Chase Tinkham. He's one of our customer success managers here at ChurnZero, and he's going to be kind of discussing how a CSM uses ChurnZero. Think about it as a day in life. So that concludes the webinar, but I do want to leave it open for a few questions. Let's wait a few seconds to kind of see what kind of questions we'll come through. Okay, I have one. Actually, another one has come through. How can you convince your leadership to adopt in-app technology if they haven't? I think a really great way to do that is if you could show usage reports, and if you can also correlate that to the effort that you guys have made on the CS team to help drive that adoption. And if it's not working, it's data that shows that we could try a potential other method. I think a lot of leadership, again, they really follow all data, or they listen to the data. We have to not just talk about it kind of anecdotally, but make sure that we're showing them facts about kind of usage. The next question is there an ideal number of steps in each walkthrough? I wouldn't say there's an ideal number of steps. Simplicity is key on this, but keep in mind, some of the things that walkthroughs are used for can be highly complex. So while you try to simplify it, don't try to oversimplify it to the point where it doesn't get the point across, and people might get confused and actually not kind of, it won't ultimately help drive that behavior. All right, guys, it looks like that is all for the questions. Thank you all so much for the time today. I wish you guys well and enjoy your week.